The last message. The galaxy was about to change, and no one was prepared for it. In the deepest, most secret parts of Earth, a team of the brightest minds worked tirelessly in a hidden facility. They had one task: to send a message across the stars, a message that would echo through the galaxy. It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a cry of desperation. It was a warning, and it carried a simple, terrifying message. Humanity is coming. For centuries, Earth had been ignored, forgotten, and underestimated by the galactic powers. They saw humanity as nothing more than a primitive species, a fledgling civilization that could barely reach the stars. The alien empires had no reason to fear the humans, but soon they would learn how wrong they were. The room was silent except for the hum of the machines, working at full power. The message was complete. It was encoded and ready. All that was needed was for the signal to be sent. The facility's director, General Carter, stood in front of the control panel, her face serious. Her fingers hovered over the glowing button. She knew this moment would change everything. There was no turning back. She pressed the button. A pulse of energy shot into the atmosphere. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, bypassing planets, stars, and galaxies, making its way to the farthest reaches of the universe. It would be received by every intelligent species that had access to deep space communication systems, and it would bring terror with it. The message was short, direct, and simple. It didn't need to be long to be effective. In the vast silence of space, the message echoed with an unsettling force. Humanity is coming. Prepare for what's next. Across the galaxy, various species began to pick up the signal. Some of them ignored it. Some laughed at it. How could a primitive species like humans be a threat? They had no fleet, no advanced technology. They were nothing compared to the mighty empires that ruled the galaxy. But there were a few who didn't ignore the message. There were a few who were not so quick to dismiss humanity. The first to react were the Valkyrians, a race of ancient warriors who controlled vast sectors of space. They had faced many enemies throughout their long history, but never a species like humans. Their leader, Emperor Vorik, stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out at the stars. He had heard the message, and unlike most, he believed it. "There's something about this message," Vorik muttered to himself. "This is no ordinary species. We must be cautious." He ordered his fleet to begin preparations. The Valkyrians were not known for their mercy, but they had learned to respect power when they saw it. This was not a species to be underestimated. On Earth, General Carter and her team watched as the message reached its destination. There was no turning back now. The galaxy knew humanity was coming. The final steps of the plan were already in motion. The Terran fleet had been disbanded years ago, but that didn't mean humanity had given up on the stars. In fact, they had been preparing for this day, for a day when they would rise again. Humanity's final weapon, an ancient technology known only to a few, was ready to be activated. It was called the Titan, a weapon capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single strike. It had been buried, forgotten, waiting for the moment when humanity would need it. The time had come. General Carter had given the order. The Titan would rise. As the message spread throughout the galaxy, different empires reacted in their own ways. Some laughed, dismissing it as the desperate cries of a species doomed to fall. Others, like the Valkyrians, began to prepare for something they didn't understand but feared nonetheless. They knew that humanity had something powerful, something dangerous. But what could it be? Was it really just a fleet? Or was it something far worse? But not all the galaxy's powers took the message seriously. The Gralians, a ruthless race of conquerors, merely scoffed at the idea. Their empire stretched across countless worlds, and they had no reason to fear a species that hadn't even mastered faster-than-light travel. The Gralian emperor, Sauron, laughed when his officers brought him the news of the human message. "Let them come," he sneered. "They will be crushed just like every other species before them." But what Sauron didn't know was that the humans were not alone. They had allies, old allies who had once helped them build the very weapons they now had in their hands. And these allies, though hidden for centuries, were prepared to stand with humanity when the time came. Back on Earth, General Carter turned to her team. They had done it. The message had been sent. The galaxy would never be the same again. But it wasn't just the message that was important. It was what was coming next. Humanity's final weapon was about to be unleashed, and no one, not even the most powerful empires, was ready for it. The stars themselves would tremble as humanity's final warning reached its destination. But would it be enough? Would the galaxy fall to its knees in fear, or would humanity's enemies rise up to crush them once and for all? The suspense was building. Every civilization across the galaxy was now waiting, wondering what would happen next. They had heard the message, and they knew that humanity was coming. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know what was waiting for them. As General Carter stood in front of the control panel, she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The final message had been sent. Now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences. Would they survive, or would they be crushed under the weight of humanity's wrath? The stars held their breath as the first signs of humanity's return began to stir. The message had been sent, and across the galaxy, the stirrings of fear began. No one could ignore the weight of it. Some dismissed it, some laughed, but others took it seriously. And those who took it seriously were preparing for a storm that was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Valkyrians, ancient warriors who controlled vast territories, were among the first to act. Emperor Vorik stood before the vast windows of his flagship, staring out at the cold void of space. He could see the entire fleet arrayed before him, ships of incredible size and firepower, weapons of destruction that had conquered countless worlds. But he felt no comfort. The message had unsettled him. There was something about it, something that didn't sit right. "Are we sure we have all the information?" Vorik asked his chief advisor, a grizzled veteran named Krell. Krell, who had fought in dozens of campaigns, didn't hesitate. "Yes, Emperor." The message came from Earth, a human colony somewhere in the distant sectors. They've been sending out signals for days now, and the message is clear. Humanity is returning, and they've prepared something. Vorik clenched his fists, turning away from the window. Prepared what? They have no fleets, no army worth mentioning. But they have something else, Krell said, his voice low. Something older, something we don't understand. The Emperor paused. He knew the history of the humans, or at least he thought he did. Long ago, they had been wiped out by the other empires, a forgotten species left to rot in the far reaches of space. But now, their message had returned, and it echoed with an unmistakable certainty. They were coming. He turned back to Krell. "We need to find out what this is. Send scouts now. I want to know everything about their fleet, their technology, and most importantly, their weapon." Krell bowed and left the room, his face grim. The first steps of preparation had begun. The Valkyrians would not be caught off guard. They would find out what humanity had, and if necessary, destroy it before it could be unleashed. Far from the reaches of the Valkyrians, across a desolate world on the edge of human-controlled space, the small team of scientists working for General Carter stood silently in the control room. They had just received confirmation that the message had gone out. The final warning was now racing across the galaxy. But the real task was about to begin. General Carter's voice echoed through the room as she gave the order, her calm demeanor masking the weight of what was about to unfold. "Activate the Titan," she commanded. The Titan wasn't just a ship. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a legacy, one that had been built and hidden for centuries. It had the power to destroy entire fleets in one shot, and humanity had never intended to use it. But now, with the threat looming over them, it was their only hope. The only way to show the galaxy that Earth was no longer weak, no longer helpless. The massive ship, dormant for centuries, began to awaken. Its systems powered up, one by one, as the ancient technology hummed to life. The crew, who had trained for years in secret, began their final checks. The Titan would be humanity's weapon, their final stand. But even with it, the odds were still against them. Back in the heart of the galaxy, the Gralian Empire received the message. They were a ruthless, militaristic species with an iron grip on dozens of systems, their fleets the most feared in the galaxy. And when Emperor Xalran heard the message from Earth, he was not impressed. He laughed, a cold, cruel sound that filled the throne room. "So the humans think they can threaten us," he sneered, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the message again. "They don't even have a fleet. What are they going to do? Send some tiny ships our way? Let them try." His advisors looked at one another, exchanging nervous glances. They knew the reputation of the humans. They had been wiped out long ago. There was no reason to fear them now. Yet, something in the message, something in the tone, made them uneasy. "What if they have found something?" One of the advisors asked quietly. "What if they'd discovered a weapon beyond our understanding?" Xalran scoffed. "No weapon could threaten the Gralians. We are the strongest empire in the galaxy. The humans are weak. Let them try. They will be crushed." But even as he spoke, a shadow of doubt crept into his mind. The Gralians had always been the predators of the galaxy, and they never feared anything. But now, a small seed of uncertainty was planted in his mind. What if they had something powerful? What if Earth had finally unleashed a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets? The Emperor slammed his fist on the armrest of his throne. "Prepare the fleet. We will crush them once and for all. Let them send whatever they have. They will regret ever challenging the Gralians." Back on Earth, the Titan continued to power up. The final message had been sent, but the true test was still to come. Humanity had made its warning, but would the galaxy listen? Would the mighty empires of the universe tremble, or would they dismiss it as the desperate act of a species on the brink of extinction? General Carter stood in the control room, her heart pounding as the Titan's massive engines roared to life. The countdown had begun. Humanity was no longer a forgotten species. They had something to prove, and the galaxy would soon learn that Earth was not to be underestimated. The first ship to arrive would be met with the full force of humanity's wrath. The warning had been sent. The storm was rising. The galaxy was about to learn that it had made a grave mistake. Across the galaxy, the power of humanity's final message began to take shape. What was once a faint tremor in the cosmic fabric now rippled through the vast empires that held dominion over the stars. The fear it invoked spread like wildfire, with each empire receiving the warning in their own way, but none could ignore its weight. They knew the galaxy was never the same after this message, and they could feel the tide turning. On the war-torn planet of Scathar, home to the ruthless and cunning Zorathians, a council of generals and strategists gathered. The Zorathians were infamous for their tactical brilliance and terrifyingly efficient war machines. However, even they couldn't dismiss what they had heard from Earth. The supreme leader, General Roan, stood before his council, his face hard and scarred from countless battles. The message from Earth had been brief, yet powerful. Humanity's final message echoes across the stars, and terror follows. Roan clenched his fists, his eyes glowing with suspicion. "Are we to sit here and do nothing?" he thundered, his voice booming in the dark council hall. A murmur of discontent filled the room as the other generals exchanged uncertain glances. The Zorathians had always believed that the humans were nothing more than a fleeting memory, a species wiped out long ago, their name lost in the sands of time. So why now? Why this message? "What if Earth truly has something?" said General Thrax, his voice lower than most, but heavy with the burden of responsibility. "Something that could threaten us. Something beyond their known technology." Roan shot him a hard look. "Nonsense. We've encountered their colonies, their relics. Earth is gone. There's nothing to fear." But even as he spoke, doubt lingered in his mind. The unease in his chest gnawed at him, the feeling that there was more to this than just another human relic. What if it wasn't a relic at all? What if it was something much more dangerous? He turned his attention to his communications officer. "Send scouts. We will find the source of this message. And if there's anything worth investigating, we will be ready." As the scouts were dispatched to investigate, the Zorathian fleet began to stir with unsettling anticipation. Every officer, every soldier, every warrior knew that the power of fear could win battles before the first shot was ever fired. And humanity, or what remained of them, had succeeded in planting the seed of terror deep within their hearts. Like years away, within the heart of the Galactic Senate, a similar reaction unfolded. The Senate had heard the message and had immediately summoned an emergency session. Representatives from various planets and systems filled the grand hall, their faces etched with concern, their voices thick with uncertainty. Among the most powerful factions in the galaxy, the Androxy Federation was known for its technological advancements and its tight-knit political alliance. And they were not ones to be easily swayed by rumors or fear. But the message had been different. Even the Androxy couldn't deny that something about the tone struck a nerve. Chancellor Villar, the esteemed leader of the Androxy, stood at the head of the Senate chamber, his posture rigid and his expression unreadable. The murmurs around the room died down as he raised his hand. "We have all heard the warning from Earth, and many of you have already expressed your doubts, but I urge you all to take this seriously," Villar said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "We may dismiss the humans as weak, but they are a force that should never be underestimated. They have surprised us before, and if they found a weapon, or worse, something that challenges our authority, we must be prepared." A loud voice from the back of the room interrupted. "Prepare for what? A species that has been erased for centuries. They've left no fleet, no army, only forgotten ruins and ancient technologies." Villar's gaze swept over the room, locking eyes with the speaker, a representative from the Calthar Dominion, a race known for their aggressive tactics. And yet, they've sent this message to every corner of the galaxy. That alone speaks volumes. This is not a plea for help. This is a declaration. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. "And in my experience, when a species is on the brink of extinction and yet sends out a message like this, it means they have something powerful, something they've held in reserve for the right moment." A hushed silence fell over the chamber. The Senate was divided. Some still believed the message was nothing more than a trick, an empty threat from a species that had been defeated long ago. But the words of Chancellor Villar echoed in their minds, reminding them that sometimes the greatest dangers came when they were least expected. The Androxy Federation, ever cautious and calculating, prepared their forces. Their scouts were ordered to gather information. Every fleet was to remain on high alert. They couldn't afford to let their guard down. If humanity truly had something, they needed to know it before it was too late. Back on Earth, General Carter stood in front of the massive holographic display in the command center. The Titan was ready, and her heart beat faster with each passing moment. Humanity had sent the message. The universe had heard it. But now, they had to prove they weren't just sending empty threats. Now they had to show the galaxy that humanity was not weak. The Titan's enormous engines rumbled beneath her feet as she watched the final systems come online. The ship had been designed for moments like this, when everything was on the line, and there was no turning back. The ancient weapon they had discovered all those years ago was ready to be unleashed. Humanity's fate, their place in the stars, rested on this one moment, and the first ship to challenge them would be the first to feel the power of Earth's ultimate weapon. The stars were silent as the Zorathian fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them. Their ships, sleek and menacing, filled the black void with their imposing presence. General Roan's flagship, the Ruthless Fury, was at the forefront, its weapons primed and ready. The Zorathian commanders had been prepared for this moment, but nothing could have fully prepared them for the scale of what they were about to face. Roan stood at the helm, his cold eyes scanning the vast emptiness beyond. The silence in the room was deafening. every officer aboard his flagship tense with anticipation. The message from Earth had not just echoed across the stars, it had settled deep in the hearts of their enemies. The galaxy, once confident in their dominance, was now uncertain, and that fear had given birth to a primal desire for vengeance. "I want every ship in position," Roan barked. "Target Earth's defenses. We'll destroy them before they have a chance to react." But despite his words, Roan couldn't shake the growing unease gnawing at him. He knew, deep down, that this was not a simple mission. The humans had something powerful. And it wasn't just about the message they'd sent. No, it was about the way the galaxy had changed in the wake of that message. Something was stirring, and the Zorathians were about to find out exactly what that was. Back on Earth, the Titan was ready. The massive warship, larger than any vessel in the galaxy, stood poised to defend its home. General Carter stood in the command center, watching the final countdown unfold on the holographic display. Around her, the atmosphere was electric, every crew member at their station, awaiting the signal. The final message had been sent. Now it was time to see if humanity's enemies would take the bait. "They've entered our system," Carter said, her voice calm but resolute. "Activate the defense grid." Her words were met with swift action. Across Earth, massive defense satellites began to power up, their weapons aligning with precision. Every planetary defense system humanity had ever built was online and ready to face the coming assault. But Carter knew that these systems alone wouldn't be enough. The Zorathians were no ordinary enemy, and if it came to a direct confrontation, Earth's defenses would need the ultimate weapon, the Titan. As the first waves of the Zorathian fleet advanced, the battle began in earnest. Blasts of energy lit up the dark expanse of space, streaking across the void as the Zorathian ships fired upon Earth's defensive satellites. The first few hits were intercepted, but the Zorathians were relentless. Their ships tore through the space around Earth, firing upon every target they could find. "General, they're pushing through our defenses," one of the officers called out. "They're targeting our key satellite installations." Carter's expression didn't change. "We knew they'd come for the weak points, but they won't reach Earth." As she spoke, the massive shadow of the Titan loomed behind the lines, its enormous guns coming online. With one final glance at the holographic map of the battle, Carter issued the order that would change everything. "Activate the main weapon. Let's see if they're ready for this." A wave of energy surged through the Titan, its core glowing with a fierce intensity. The weapon that had been dormant for centuries was now alive, its destructive potential ready to be unleashed. For the first time, the power of Earth's ultimate weapon would be shown to the galaxy. On the ruthless fury, General Roan had been watching the unfolding battle with growing frustration. Earth's defenses were tougher than expected, but they were still vulnerable. His ships were pressing forward, and it was only a matter of time before Earth's defenses would buckle under the weight of their assault. But just as he was about to issue the final orders to destroy Earth's remaining satellites, the unthinkable happened. A massive energy pulse erupted from the heart of Earth's fleet. It was unlike anything Roan had ever seen. The pulse surged across the battlefield, rippling outward like a shockwave. Every Zorathian ship in the vicinity was caught in the blast, and for a moment, it seemed as if time itself had stopped. The ruthless fury rocked violently, the force of the blast tearing through the ship's shields. Roan gripped the armrests of his command chair as alarms blared throughout the vessel. The Zorathians had been caught off guard, but what was more shocking was the sheer power of the blast. It was as if a part of the very stars had come alive and struck back. "What in the galaxy was that?" Roan shouted, his voice barely rising above the noise of the alarms. "Report. What happened?" His officer quickly scanned the data, his face paling. "General, that was from Earth. It's their final weapon. We've never seen anything like it." Roan's mind raced. Earth's ultimate weapon. This was what they had been hiding, and it was powerful beyond belief. "Withdraw," Roan ordered, his voice grim. "We need to regroup and assess the situation." Earth is not a target we can take lightly. But it was too late. As the Zorathian ships began to retreat, another energy pulse surged from the Titan, this time aimed directly at the heart of their fleet. The second blast was more focused, more precise. It tore through the Zorathian ships, shattering their shields and ripping their vessels apart with ease. The ruthless fury was caught in the blast, its massive hull cracking under the pressure. Roan could only watch as the ships around him were destroyed, one after another, and the fear that had been planted in the hearts of the Zorathian fleet only grew stronger. Earth had unleashed its fury, and it had changed the course of the battle forever. The first wave of the Zorathian assault had failed, and with it, a message was sent to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a forgotten relic. They were a force to be reckoned with. The battle had barely begun, yet the galaxy was already feeling the effects of Earth's ultimate weapon. Across the stars, the news spread faster than any ship could travel. The Zorathian fleet had retreated, broken by a force they couldn't comprehend, and the universe was left in stunned silence. Humanity had proven it wasn't just another species. It was a power that could shake the very foundations of the galaxy. In the heart of the Zorathian Empire, General Roan paced back and forth in his war room, his mind racing with the realization of what had just happened. The Earth's weapon had been a game-changer, and it had devastated his fleet. His mind was clouded with frustration and fear. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. They shouldn't have been able to do that, Roan muttered under his breath. How did they hide such a weapon for so long? His officers stood in tense silence, waiting for their leader to make a decision. But even Roan didn't know what the next move should be. Earth was no longer a vulnerable target. They had become a threat that the Zorathians couldn't ignore. "We'll rebuild," Roan finally said, his voice hard with resolve. "Send for reinforcements. We'll assemble a fleet large enough to crush them once and for all." But deep inside, Roan knew this would not be as easy as it sounded. The humans had turned the tide, and now they were not only defending their home, they were a force that could attack the galaxy itself. Their final message had shaken the very core of the galaxy's power structure, and it was impossible to ignore the implications. Back on Earth, General Carter stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy. The Titan had fired twice, and each time, the response had been nothing short of devastating. But Carter knew the battle wasn't over. The Zorathians would regroup. They were powerful, and they would not accept defeat easily. "We've made our point, but the real fight is just beginning," she said, her voice steady but filled with determination. Her officers nodded, knowing that this was not a time for celebration. The message they'd sent had been heard, but the war was far from over. Humanity had only just begun to reveal its strength. The Titan was ready for whatever came next. Earth's warships were already positioning themselves in orbit, and the defenses surrounding the planet were at full strength. But it wasn't just Earth's might that had changed the balance. It was the message. The galaxy had always thought of Earth as a small, insignificant world, tucked away in the farthest corner of the universe. But now, that perception had been shattered. Humanity was no longer hidden in the shadows. They were coming out of the darkness, and they would not be ignored. Across the galaxy, the reactions were varied. Some species trembled in fear, while others began to question their alliances. What if Earth was no longer the weakling of the galaxy? What if they had just awakened something ancient and terrifying that could tear apart entire fleets in seconds? In the shadowy corners of the galaxy, those who had once dismissed humanity as a minor nuisance were now taking notice. The message had reverberated far beyond the Zorathians. It had reached factions that had long remained neutral in galactic conflicts. The balance of power was shifting, and no one knew what would happen next. The Therasian Alliance, a vast federation of several powerful species, began to discuss their response. For years, they had kept their distance from the humans, watching as Earth grew from a chaotic world into a fledgling spacefaring civilization. But now, they could no longer ignore the human threat. They convened a council of the galaxy's most influential leaders to decide what to do about Earth. "What if we side with the Zorathians?" one Theresian leader asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "They are formidable. Perhaps together we can crush this new threat before it becomes too powerful." But another leader, more cautious than the first, shook his head. "The Zorathians are already weakened. If we join them now, we risk our own destruction. This is not a fight to take lightly." The debate raged on, but the decision was clear. The Theresians and many other factions would begin to prepare for the worst. Earth had become a real power, and the galaxy needed to know how to respond. They would either have to find a way to stop the humans or align with them. Back on Earth, General Carter stood before a map of the galaxy, her eyes cold and focused. They had sent their message to the stars, and now the galaxy was scrambling to figure out what to do about it. Humanity had become the unexpected force in this galactic chess game, and Carter knew that this moment would define the future of Earth and the galaxy itself. "We've shown them our strength," Carter said, her voice resolute. "But now we must prepare for what comes next." Behind her, the crew of the Titan stood at attention, ready to face whatever challenge would emerge. The Zorathians weren't the only ones who would be coming for Earth. The message had done more than rattle their enemies. It had sparked the interest of the entire galaxy. Everyone wanted to see what humanity would do next. The tension was palpable. Earth was no longer just a target. It was the eye of the storm, and the galaxy was about to see just how powerful a species could become when pushed to its breaking point. The final message from humanity had echoed across the stars, and the fear it had unleashed was just beginning. Across the stars, the ripples of humanity's final message had spread like wildfire. No corner of the galaxy was left untouched. The once dominant Zorathian Empire, a vast and powerful force, was now forced to lick its wounds, its pride shattered. Their fleet was in disarray, and they were no longer the unquestioned rulers of the galaxy. Humanity, once thought of as insignificant and weak, had made its presence known in the most terrifying way imaginable. Back on Earth, General Carter stood in the command center, her eyes never leaving the holographic map of the galaxy. The Zorathians had retreated, but that was only the beginning. Humanity had sent its message, and now the galaxy was forced to react. The question was not whether they would retaliate, but how and when. The communications had come in from every corner of the galaxy. Some begged for peace, some demanded Earth's surrender, and others were already planning their counterattacks. The most unexpected part, however, was the number of species that sought to form alliances with humanity. Once seen as insignificant, Earth was now the center of the galaxy's attention. "General Carter, the message from the Euvorians has just arrived," said a young officer, breaking the silence. Carter's eyes narrowed. The Euvorians were a powerful species, known for their speed and advanced technology. They had been neutral during the early stages of the galactic conflict, watching as humanity struggled to find its place among the stars. Now, they were extending an olive branch. "Read it to me," Carter commanded. The officer hesitated for a moment before reading aloud. "We acknowledge the power you have demonstrated. We wish to explore the possibilities of an alliance. The Euvorians understand the strength of your people and are prepared to stand beside you should the need arise." Carter let the words sink in. The galaxy was shifting beneath their feet, and the Euvorians were just the beginning. Humanity was no longer a small player in the grand scheme of things. It was a force to be reckoned with. She turned to her officers, her voice cold but determined. "We'll consider their offer. But make no mistake, humanity stands alone, unless we decide otherwise. We are not here to make friends. We are here to win this war." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Zorathian Empire, Emperor Zorath sat in his palace, a dark and foreboding figure. The once proud ruler of the galaxy now looked over his shattered empire with a sense of dread. His fleet had been devastated, and his enemies were closing in. The humans had proven themselves to be a far greater threat than he could have ever imagined. Zorath's advisors gathered around him, whispering in hushed tones. No one knew how to respond to humanity's challenge. The Emperor had been humiliated in front of the galaxy, and the repercussions of that defeat were yet to be fully realized. "We must rebuild our forces," Zorath muttered, his voice low and filled with anger. "We cannot let the humans get away with this. We will crush them, and we will show the galaxy that Zorath will not be humbled." But even as he spoke, doubt began to creep into his mind. The humans had something that he could not easily understand, something that had turned the tide of the battle in their favor. And though he would never admit it to his advisors, the fear that had gripped him after the battle still lingered. Elsewhere in the galaxy, smaller factions were also reacting to humanity's challenge. The Therasian Alliance, once neutral, now found itself at a crossroads. Their council was in chaos, each member arguing for a different course of action. Some wanted to join the humans, seeing the potential for power and influence, while others urged caution, fearing the unknown consequences of aligning with a species as unpredictable as humanity. "We cannot ignore this," said Admiral Darnek, a respected leader of the Therasian fleet. "Humanity has shown us its might. We must decide whether to ally with them or risk becoming their next target." The council hall was filled with voices, each one pushing for their own vision of the future. It was clear that the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The Therasians, who had once stood as a neutral force, now found themselves caught between the rising human empire and the crumbling Zorathian regime. "We must be careful," another counselor warned. "The Zorathians may be weakened, but they are not defeated. If we side with the humans, we risk enraging the Zorathian forces, and they will retaliate with everything they have." The debate continued, with no clear answer in sight. The galaxy was at a crossroads, and no one could predict what would happen next. Back on Earth, General Carter knew that they could not afford to rest on their laurels. The message had been sent, but the real war was just beginning. The Zorathians would regroup, the galaxy would react, and humanity would have to be ready for whatever came next. "We've made our point," Carter said, her voice resolute. "But now we must prepare for the storm that's coming. We cannot afford to underestimate our enemies, and we cannot let our guard down." The Titan and its fleet stood ready, prepared to defend Earth from whatever threats arose. But Carter knew that the challenge was not just military, it was political. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had to decide where it would stand in the new order. But as she looked at the galaxy map, Carter's eyes narrowed. Humanity had sent its message, and the universe had heard it. Now there was no turning back. The galaxy would never be the same again. The tension in the galaxy had reached its breaking point. Every corner of the known universe was now alive with whispers of humanity's bold message. A message that had echoed like a shockwave through space, reverberating off the stars themselves. It wasn't just a declaration of strength. It was a challenge, a warning, and a promise of something far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. On Earth, General Carter stood on the command bridge of the Titan, the massive warship that had become the symbol of humanity's newfound power. Her eyes scanned the display as the vast expanse of space stretched out before her. The communications came in one after another. Alien factions, former enemies, and new alliances, all offering their own responses to humanity's defiance. Some pleaded for peace, others threatened war, but all of them had been forced to take humanity seriously. And then one transmission stood out among the rest. A dark, foreboding message from the heart of the Zorathian Empire arrived. It was from Emperor Zorath himself, and it carried the weight of a threat that none could ignore. "We will not forget this insult, humans," the Emperor's voice crackled through the speakers, his tone cold and filled with malice. "The galaxy will tremble, but it will not be your hands that cause the destruction. You have awakened forces beyond your understanding. You will regret challenging the Zorathian Empire." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a sense of unease hanging in the air. General Carter felt a chill run down her spine as she turned to her officers. The Zorathians were not a race to be underestimated, but humanity had never been a species to back down. This was no longer just a war. It was a battle for the survival of Earth, for the very future of humanity. Across the galaxy, things were just as tense. The Euvorians, who had once extended an olive branch, now seemed hesitant. Their offer of alliance was still on the table, but their leaders were growing more cautious, afraid of what the Zorathians might do next. The Therasian alliance was divided, with factions rising on both sides. Some saw humanity as the key to a new future, while others feared that aligning with Earth would lead to their destruction at the hands of the Zorathian Empire. As the days passed, Carter knew that the time for diplomacy was running out. The Zorathians were preparing their fleet, gathering their forces in secret, and the galaxy was on the brink of war. Humanity had sent its message, and now the universe was waiting to see what would happen next. The human fleet, the largest ever assembled, was ready for whatever came. They had the Titan, the pride of Earth's military, but they also had something that no one else possessed, a deep, unyielding resolve. The humans knew that they would be tested in ways they had never imagined, but they also knew that there was no turning back. This was their moment. In the far reaches of space, beyond the systems controlled by the Zorathians, a fleet of unknown ships appeared on the radar. These ships, sleek and silent, moved toward Earth with a speed that was nothing short of terrifying. At first, it was thought to be a rogue faction, but then the message came through. "We are the Narnax," the voice said, a deep, resonant tone that carried across the stars. "We have heard your message, humans, and we offer you our strength. We will stand with you against the Zorathians." Carter's heart skipped a beat. The Narnax were an ancient race, known for their technological prowess and their ability to manipulate the fabric of space itself. If the Narnax were offering their support, it meant that humanity's message had gone far beyond what anyone had anticipated. And it meant that the Zorathian Empire was not the only threat humanity had to worry about. With the Narnax at their side, the human fleet now had a fighting chance. But that didn't mean victory was guaranteed. The Zorathians were formidable, their forces vast, and they would stop at nothing to destroy Earth and its people. The battle that lay ahead would test humanity in ways it had never been tested before. As Carter stood on the bridge of the Titan, she could feel the weight of the universe on her shoulders. The galaxy had heard humanity's warning, and now it was time to face the consequences. Earth had sent its message, but the question remained, would the universe fall in line, or would it fight back with everything it had? There was no turning back now. The fate of Earth, and the future of humanity, rested in the hands of its soldiers, its fleet, and its will to survive. And with the galaxy holding its breath, General Carter knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The universe had been awakened.